Broken. Chapter 10. Pieces. Rainbow Dash held Applejack in her forelegs for a long time, silent tears of pure happiness and relief escaping their eyes. They stayed like this for an unknown amount of time, unable to let one another go. Eventually Applejack had climbed up onto the small hospital bed after shutting off the lights, letting the beautiful vista of the full moon in the window illuminate the room slightly. The two mares laid on their uninjured sides, facing each other with fondness in their eyes. Rainbow ran a bandaged hoof across the orange mare's cheek and through her disheveled blonde mane. It had actually happened. Applejack was hers. Not only had they kissed, but she had returned Rainbow's undying love. Maybe Dash had died, and this was her own personal heaven. She knew the idea was ridiculous, but heaven was the only thing she could compare this moment with. All of her heartache for the past 4 years was finally satisfied. The past 2 weeks were now behind her, and she simply couldn't believe it. As Rainbow reflected on these thoughts, she felt a fresh tear spill over her quivering cheek, only to be wiped away by a nuzzle from the farm pony. The Pegasus whimpered from the touch. "Rainbow?" Applejack started, her voice soft and beautiful. "What's wrong?"
I'm just so happy,"
cried Dash, reaching out and holding Applejack close with her forehead against her chest. The orange mare placed a hoof to the back of Rainbow's head, stroking her mane gently.
"Everything that's happened, all the stupid things I've done, none of it matters anymore, 'cause I have you here now. I just don't know how to deal with it."
"Y'all don't know how to be happy?" asked Applejack with a cocked eyebrow.
"No, I do, but it's just... I don't know how to be this happy,"
Dash replied, breaking down again. The orange mare wiped away her tears, uttering a calm shush. Now, no more tears, Sugar Cube. I gotcha," she whispered in her ear. Rainbow sniffed, embracing her love.
"Why, Applejack?"
"Why what?"
"Why all of a sudden do you love me?"
asked Dash.
"You've always been, well, against mares being together."
Applejack hesitated, looking unaware of what to say. "It was the way I was brought up, Rainbow," she started. "So when you first told me about your feelings, I guess I didn't know how to take it. At first I knew you were my friend and nothing more. But then Rarity asked me if I actually felt something."
"Why would she ask that?"
"Because of how I reacted to y'all moving," Applejack answered. "And 'cause how Rainbow, when I heard that y'all had lost your job right after I rejected you, I couldn't take it. I felt so darn guilty, like it was my fault. I had to go and find you and just make sure you were okay." Rainbow's eyes widened when she started to pull the pieces together. The night when Fluttershy gave her the letter of termination was when she had sat upon that high cloud. The night when she considered leaving everything behind. When she cried like a filly while speaking to her dead parents. She couldn't have heard that. Dash was too high off the ground at that time. Applejack would have been high up, standing on a cloud or something. "Then I found y'all, Rainbow, and I heard everything," whispered the orange mare, giving her a look of sorrowful concern. The Cyan Pegasus gasped, retreating her head under the sheets. Even being this close to Applejack now, she couldn't bear to know that some pony had heard that.
Rainbow, it's okay. In fact, it was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard.
Applejack removed the covers from Dash's crimson face, planting a kiss to her lips. If there was anything that ever made her feel better, it was the orange mare's kiss. Suddenly, she didn't care what Applejack had heard, for it only made them closer. The Pegasus felt her body go limp, simply complying with anything that Applejack was doing to her. Rainbow never knew how submissive she was when it came to these kind of things. She had never been with another pony, and the only one she ever thought of was Applejack. The farm pony rolled on top of her, straddling the Pegasus's hips while sliding her tongue into her mouth. Rainbow uttered a shuddering breath through her nose as her cheeks lit up, wondering with a muddled mind just where this was going. She didn't care about the ache in her side, nor the searing pain in her right foreleg. And suddenly Applejack sprung up, leaning over the panting Pegasus. The orange mare's cheeks were blazing red, looking on either side of Rainbow.
Y'all feeling all right, sugar?
She asked, clearly embarrassed. Rainbow caught her breath, wondering what she was talking about. She didn't have to think too long, for she traced Applejack's gaze to find both of her wings were standing straight out on either side of the bed, completely rigid.
Oh,
Rainbow breathed.
That happens. Don't worry about it.
Are you sure? She asked, hesitantly touching her right wing, and then Rainbow's mind exploded with a new, unfamiliar sensation as the orange mare lightly caressed her feathers with a hoof. She attempted to stop her, until she felt a shuddering gasp of ecstasy escape her lips.
Applejack, don't do that,
Rainbow breathed, panting heavily as she held her back. Applejack's face lit up with a realization, as it grew redder than before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I was just curious,
she stammered, before placing a hoof over her mouth, clearly stifling a snicker.
Maybe I shouldn't do that just yet.
Applejack slowly dismounted Dash, returning to her side. The Pegasus rolled over to face the orange mare with closed eyes. She did what she could to calm down, thankful they didn't take their new relationship too fast. Rainbow had been waiting for this to happen for years now, and she didn't want anything to screw it up. Despite her right hind leg twitching in apprehension, Rainbow bit her lip and opened her eyes.
Sorry about that,
Applejack giggled.
Not exactly well informed on Pegasus, anatomy. It's okay,
said Dash, once she caught her breath.
Let's just take it slow. I don't want to ruin what we have. We have something, right?
Applejack laughed.
Of course we do, Dash, she said. Despite what's been said and everything that's happened, I want to be with you because I love you, Rainbow.
Dash half swooned, delighted to hear her say her name.
Say it again.
I love you?
No, my name.
Why?
I love the way you say it,
Rainbow replied, wrapping her hooves around Applejack's neck, burying her face into the blonde mane. The orange mare chuckled.
I love you, Rainbow Dash.
Rainbow sighed with delight, finally able to fall asleep with her mind at peace. Rainbow Dash awoke the next morning, finding a small smile upon her face. She rolled over away from the window to find Applejack, awake and staring into her eyes. She had left the bed, standing by its side. Dash sighed with contentment as her mare friend gave her a good morning kiss, light but passionate.
"Aww,"
squealed a voice. Rainbow lurched into the air, falling to the cold linoleum floor with a loud thud. Pain exploded from her side, her bruised lungs heaving. "Rainbow!" cried Applejack, running around to the other side of the bed, trying to help her up. Dash couldn't move. The fall had taken the wind from her chest. And suddenly she felt herself float upwards, surrounded by a violet light before she was placed lightly upon the mattress. Twilight, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie stood on the right side of the bed, accompanied by Dr. Stable. Dash felt her face heat up and her eyes widen. "Pinkie Pie!" Rarity scolded. The pink mare had a hoof to her mouth.
"I'm sorry, Dashy," she said. "I couldn't help it. That was so cute."
Rainbow didn't move, unable to find what to say. "They all know, Rainbow. Sorry," said Applejack, as the Pegasus slowly sat up, grunting in pain. It didn't matter all that much to Dash, but the initial shock was a lot to handle in this early morning. This wasn't the way she wanted her friends to find out.
"No, it's okay,"
Rainbow yawned. Dr. Stable chuckled, floating a clipboard in front of him. "Well, it's good to see you're still all right," he said, using his magic to flip through the papers on the board. "Well, let's run through this quickly. I imagine you all have a lot to talk about. You have a bruised lung, several lacerations along your side and flank, and a severe wound down the right foreleg and hoof. That's what you almost bled out through. It was stitched up immediately once you arrived. But I must ask, what happened to your chest? There's no way it healed that fast since the surgery." Rainbow looked down, remembering the odd event at her temporary home above the mountains. She didn't know how to explain the phenomenon. The red light, the glow of the element of loyalty in her chest fading away as quickly as it appeared. At the time, she didn't dwell on it, for her home was in dire need. But now that she thought about it, it didn't make much sense to her. Did it need to make sense? Dash looked to Fluttershy, the only other pony that had been there to witness the event. And she gave a simple shrug, clearly unaware of how to explain it either.
"Yeah. You know, Doc, I don't have a clue,"
said Rainbow, chuckling slightly.
"But I can't complain."
"Well, after yesterday's events, I'm not about to question it further either," smiled Stable. "You actually have another visitor, though. One that I don't think you could refuse."
"Who?"
asked Dash. Dr. Stable merely smiled, opening the door behind him and departing. Rainbow looked to her friends, whom all shared her confusion. The door opened again, revealing a shimmering, waving mane as a tall white alicorn entered the room. Princess Celestia smiled as the door was closed behind her.
"Princess!"
exclaimed Twilight as the 6 of them bowed their heads. "Hello, my little ponies," announced the royal mare. "Ponyville had been struck by a terrible tragedy, and I am greatly relieved to see you all alive and breathing. I have come not only to make sure you are all right, but also to congratulate you. The 6 of you have done extremely well in keeping Ponykind from taking a crushing blow. But I wish to thank 3 of you specifically for your incredible acts of bravery during the battle yesterday." She looked to Applejack, whom stood straighter now. "Applejack, Pinkie Pie, I was told of your doings yesterday, and I must say that I'm impressed. You both single-hoofedly engaged a multitude of griffins on your own, and won. Your victories yesterday have not gone unnoticed, and never will," said the princess. Celestia then turned to Rainbow. "And you, Rainbow Dash, you I have to thank most of all." Dash shifted oddly in her bed, trying to sit up. "Rainbow Dash, you stopped the leader of the Griffin army with your spectacular flight skills, and even risked your own life doing so. You did what no pony could, and will receive nothing but praise from ponies all across Equestria."
"Thank you, Princess,"
was all the Scion Pegasus could say. "Actually," the alicorn continued, "ponies have been trying to come to thank you all morning. Dr. Stable had to turn them away.
Wait, how did they know what happened?
Asked Rainbow, cocking an eyebrow. Twilight was the one to answer. Rainbow, the entire town saw you defeat Gilda, she said matter-of-factly. After the battle, every pony went to the fields and found you two fighting. Applejack got there first, of course. Rainbow gave Applejack an appreciative look before returning to the princess. I hope you're ready for attention. I assume the press is going to be all over you for an interview, noted Celestia, a chuckle in her voice. Then she used her magic to retrieve a photograph from underneath her wing, floating it over to Dash's hooves. Her 5 friends gathered around, curious to see what the picture was of. There was a heavy glare on the photo, but Rainbow could still make out the details. The picture was taken as the shockwave of the sonic rainboom broke through the prismatic illuminated thunderhead, bright bolts of lightning arching across the storm. From under the maelstrom, Rainbow saw herself, flying downwards with a solid, multicolored trail marking her trajectory. Her friends all gasped at the photo, remembering the event. Wow, that's a really good picture, noted Twilight in surprise.
What do you call that move, Dashy?
Asked Pinkie Pie. The photo shook between Dash's hooves as realization overtook her.
I call it murder,
said Rainbow in little more than a whisper. She had never had a chance to think of it until now. Dash had killed another being. That may have been where the battle had turned into, but the guilt of taking another life was overwhelming. She knew that if she didn't stop Gilda, she would have done the same thing to her, but somehow that didn't calm her mind. Her friends all gave her an off look, unable to understand what she meant, although the alicorn seemed to know. Now, Rainbow Dash, she started, you did what you had to. If you weren't there to defeat Gilda, Ponyville would be facing a much worse fate.
I guess. Thank you again, Princess,
sighed Rainbow. Applejack gave her an affectionate nuzzle on the cheek, causing her coat to stand up on the back of her neck. The alicorn smiled at this. At least you have some pony who cares so much about you, as well as your friends, said the princess. Well, I have plenty of duties regarding the rebuild of Ponyville, so I must go. But, Applejack, she turned back to the orange mare, Appaloosa has been released from the griffins. They heard their leader perished and immediately left the town in peace. Your family is unharmed. Applejack's heart seemed to lighten as she wore a look of relief. Thank you, Your Majesty. With that, Princess Celestia left the room, leaving Rainbow alone with her 5 friends again. So much had happened in the past 2 weeks. Heartbreak, devastation, realization, and then the blooming flower that was her happiness. Even through the immense amount of physical and emotional pain she had endured, Rainbow was finally happy. She had returned to Ponyville, conquered an enormously impenetrable enemy, and built a relationship with a mare she couldn't stop loving. The Scion Pegasus reached a hoof out, guiding Applejack into a warm, appreciative hug. Her mare friend kissed her atop her forehead, giving her a small smile. I've never seen you two so at peace, noted Twilight with a sense of happiness. That's 'cause I never knew what love was, said Applejack, looking to Rainbow. You?
Don't play around. You know it's the same here.
Dash smiled, before giving her a quick kiss on Applejack's adorable freckled cheek. Then she turned to Fluttershy.
You know, Shy, I never thanked you for what you did.
What? Asked the yellow Pegasus.
What did I do? You reminded me of who I was,
Dash replied.
You gave me the wake-up call that I needed. If you didn't come find me, who knows what could have happened yesterday. Thank you, Fluttershy.
The yellow mare smiled.
Oh, I'm just happy it all worked out.
Not to interrupt, but what did she do to make y'all come back? Applejack asked Rainbow, who merely pointed to her own blackened eye. And every pony in the room except Fluttershy burst out laughing.
What?
Twilight exclaimed through a chuckled breath.
Fluttershy punched you?
They spent the morning talking of the previous day's events, from Applejack's and Pinkie Pie's triumph over multiple foes, to Rainbow Dash's spectacular sonic rain boom in the midst of the deadly storm. Pinkie Pie had adapted a name to the event, calling it the Sonic Thunder Boom, and Dash merely smiled at that. In fact, she barely contributed anything to the conversation more than a nod or a smile. There wasn't anything wrong with her. Rainbow was merely letting her body finally relax. Having been stressed and pressed beyond its limits in the past 2 weeks. And Twilight was right. Rainbow was simply at peace with herself. Eventually Twilight, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie had left, having their own duties to perform to aid in the rebuild of the town. But Applejack stayed behind, not wanting to leave her mare's side.
"Don't you have work to do on the farm?"
asked Dash regretfully. She didn't want her to leave, but she didn't want Applejack to be scolded by her family. "Nah, they're fine. I made sure that the old farm hadn't been harmed before I came here. Besides, why would I want to leave?" she asked, giving Dash a quick kiss.
"Are you gonna be okay? You're still hurt really bad,"
said the Pegasus, gesturing to the orange mare's injuries. "I'll be fine, Sugar Cube. Y'all know me. I don't let a few bruises keep me from a-going."
"That's why I love you,"
whispered Dash, pulling her in for a hug, and Applejack returned the embrace. "I hope that's not all," she mused, and Rainbow let her go.
"You want the whole thing?"
"It'd be nice," said the orange mare, before holding Dash's hoof between her own. "Tell me everything." Rainbow Dash sighed, not having to try hard to recall every reason why her heart beat for Applejack.
"Well,"
she started, hating how bad she was with words.
"Because you're strong. The way you stick by your family and work so hard every day. I don't know how you do it without going crazy. You're just different, but in a good way. You're not like any pony I've ever met before. I'm so bad at this. Maybe it's because you're so much like me, where no pony else is. When I look at you, I just know, you know?"
"Yeah, I know all right," said Applejack softly. "I couldn't have put it better myself." It took a week for Dr. Stable to finally let Rainbow leave the confines of the hospital, although with her forelegs still bandaged, along with a small section of her side that still hadn't quite healed yet. Eventually Applejack had to leave halfway through the week, for she couldn't stay away from the farm forever. And once she walked through the lobby, dozens of patients and medical staff awaited her departure, either stomping or clomping their hooves, cheering her name, thanking Rainbow for saving ponykind. Dash briefly thanked them, eager to take to the skies once again. However, she was stopped by a young pair of siblings, each holding up a quill and paper. Rainbow smiled. She had never been asked for an autograph before, save from Scootaloo. She signed the papers for the filly and the colt, and winced from the flash of a camera. Apparently their parents were huge fans as well. In the past, Rainbow would have completely welcomed the attention, responding with some sort of boastful rant. But after the events that had taken place that month, for some reason it just seemed silly. Rainbow Dash left the hospital as fast as she could, instantly taking off into the skies, accompanied by the cheers of her newfound fans.
"Is this what it's like to be a Wonderbolt?" she thought. "It's nice, but I'm just not in the mood for it."
Rainbow felt an incredible sense of freedom in the air after a week of being grounded. She flew high above the town, watching as construction ponies and volunteers did what they could to rebuild the devastated town. 7 days had went by since they started, and it was almost done already. The only sign of Ponyville had ever been under attack was a section of cobblestone being replaced where the bombs had been detonated. Everything was starting to come together, save for the blackened craters in the middle of the residential area. The neighborhood was far enough away from the shopping district not to be harmed by the battle, except for the flattened section of land where there used to be a house. Rainbow's heart dropped to her stomach when she saw Scootaloo sitting on her haunches in the middle of the crater. Dash immediately dove to the ground, almost sideswiping the roof of a rather high house. The Scion Pegasus skidded to a halt next to the orange filly. Scootaloo was sobbing with her head held low, not giving Rainbow any sort of acknowledgement.
Scootaloo, what happened?
Scootaloo shuddered.
They're gone. Rainbow Dash. Who's gone?
Rainbow urged, praying to Celestia that her suspicions were incorrect.
My mom. My dad. They're gone.
Scootaloo leaped into Dash's forehooves, sobbing uncontrollably. Rainbow's eyes widened, unable to register what the filly had just said.
Oh no, Scootaloo, I'm so...
Rainbow couldn't even finish the sentence. Tears had started to form in her own eyes now, for she knew exactly what the poor little Pegasus was going through. Dash knew from experience that the words couldn't do anything to help, so she merely held the sobbing filly, rubbing the back of her purple mane with a calming hoof.
I'm so sorry, Scoot. I'm so sorry.
Rainbow did everything she could to wordlessly comfort Scootaloo, knowing full well how little it really did. It took a while, but eventually the orange filly had dehydrated herself, hiccuping in Dash's forelegs.
Hey, come on. You need something to drink,
said Rainbow, placing a hoof on Scootaloo's shoulder as they stood up. The Pegasus filly ruffled her feathers with a tearful sniff. They didn't say a word as Rainbow led her to the nearby convenience store on the outside of town. The clerk recognized the Scion Pegasus and refused to let her pay for the bottle of water. Rainbow didn't argue, her mind on Scootaloo's loss. As they left the outskirts of Ponyville, Rainbow helped the filly onto her back and flew her to her cloud home. It had been refilled with her boxes in her pet tortoise, Tank. Fluttershy had made sure that her belongings, as well as Tank, had made it back in one piece, brought by the mover Pegasi. Rainbow made sure that Scootaloo drank as much as she could. She needed to replenish as many fluids as possible. And once the bottle had been emptied, the orange filly spoke again. "Thank you, Rainbow Dash," she said in little more than a whisper. I just don't know what to do."
You know, Scoot,
Dash started.
the same thing happened to me. My parents died when I was your age.
Scootaloo shot up her head, eyes widening.
What? Yeah. You're not alone, kid,
Dash said, pulling her in for a reassuring hug.
What happened?
Well, I was out of town on a trip with Sweetie Belle. We were visiting Manhattan with her parents. We got back today after we heard about the attack. I got home about an hour ago when I saw...
Scootaloo paused, trying her best to hold back more tears.
One of our neighbors told me. They told me that my parents were home when the bomb flew through the window, and the funeral's in a few days.
Scootaloo went back to sobbing again in Rainbow's shoulder, both sitting on their haunches.
What do I do, Dash? My family is gone, and I have nowhere to go.
Rainbow Dash said nothing more, only holding the crying filly. She couldn't help but feel reminiscent of her own past. Scootaloo was much like Rainbow. It was uncanny. Everything from her need to fly to the loss of her parents at such a young age. It was like she was looking at her past self, just with an orange coat and a purple mane. And suddenly something hit the Scion Pegasus like a brick wall. An idea. An idea so perfect that it was too ridiculous to ignore. It was a huge step in both their lives. So Dash decided to wait until morning so the filly could think about it with a clear mind. Rainbow Dash awoke to the bright, rising sun showing through the window. Scootaloo had cried herself to sleep the previous night, and the Scion Pegasus had placed a warm wing over her. Tank noticed her awake, and towed over to give Dash an affectionate headbutt. Scootaloo stirred, her eyes fluttering open. The orange filly yawned, slowly getting up onto her haunches, and Dash couldn't wait to tell the little Pegasus her idea. She nudged her to attention, telling her the idea.
What?
Scootaloo gasped.
You do that? Makes sense, doesn't it?
Asked Rainbow.
So how about it?
Scootaloo hugged Dash, eternally grateful.
Of course, Dash.
Rainbow Dash walked into Mayor Mare's office, Scootaloo at her side. The mayor of Ponyville positively beamed when she saw the Scion Pegasus, and as she had guessed, Mayor started with words of congratulation. "Oh, Miss Rainbow Dash, there you are! I've been waiting to thank you and congratulate you on your heroic—" Rainbow held up a polite hoof to stop her.
Thank you, Mayor, but I'm not here for that. You can thank me all you want some other time.
But of course. Now what can I help you with, Miss Dash? Asked the mayor from behind her large desk. Rainbow looked back to Scootaloo, who nodded, sure that she still wanted to do this. Rainbow Dash smiled, turning back to the Mayor Mare.
I would like to adopt Scootaloo as my little sister.
This ends Chapter 10.